The smell of barbecue ribs and sweet corn hung thick in the Oklahoma air, the kind that clings to your clothes long after you've left the party. Balloons in red and gold bobbed above the picnic tables, celebrating Dad's 59th birthday. Everyone smiled that same polished smile, like this family had ever known harmony. I stood by the grill, turning over ribs I didn't even want to eat. I'm Avery Lane, 33, born from my father's first marriage, the one the rest of them would rather forget. To them, I was the polite ghost that haunted family gatherings, tolerated but never embraced. Laughter burst from the patio. My half-sister Brielle Lane, 30 and flawless in her crimson dress, was performing again, one hand on her hip, the other dragging her boss through the crowd like he was a prize she'd won. Brielle had our stepmother's perfect blonde curls and Dad's approval stamped across her face. I had sweat, smoke, and a pair of jeans that still smelled like late nights in my small apartment. Everyone she called, her voice slicing through the chatter. I want you to meet my boss. Evan Hart, heads turned, even Dad Richard Lane. The man who measured worth in titles and appearances straightened his posture like he'd just been told the governor was here. Brielle looped her arm through Evan's, beaming. "This," she said, pointing to me with the same hand that held her champagne glass, "is my half-sister, the family failure." Laughter rippled through the yard, Carla's shrill giggle, Dad's low chuckle, cousins smirking behind their plates. Even the clinking of forks paused. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I'd been called worse lazy. Ungrateful mistake, but never with that much celebration. Evan stood still, his hands in his pockets, eyes moving from Brielle to me. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the grill and the pop of balloon ribbons brushing the fence. Then he tilted his head slightly, the faintest hint of a smile playing at his lips. "Interesting," he said. His tone was flat, even the kind that made people listen. Brielle blinked, unsure whether he was amused or annoyed. "Because," Evan continued, "you're fired." The laughter died so fast it left a vacuum. Brielle froze, her glass trembling. What? Evan's smile didn't waver. "You heard me. You're terminated. Effective immediately. We'll discuss the details Monday morning." The yard fell silent, no clinking silverware, no cheap country music from the speaker. Nothing but the distant hiss of the grill. I stared at him, stunned. Fired? Why, how? But the look in his eyes wasn't about me. It was about her. Brielle's face drained of color. "You can't not. Here," she whispered. Evan simply nodded. Polite as ever. "Enjoy your evening." Then he turned to me and gave the smallest nod of acknowledgement, professional, distant, yet knowing. I stood there, gripping the tongs, ribs burning on the grill, everyone else frozen in disbelief. Dad's jaw worked like he was about to speak but couldn't find words. Carla's wine glass tilted, spilling red onto her white blouse, and for the first time in my life, the silence in that backyard didn't feel like shame. It felt like justice. When people humiliate you in public, they expect you to break. I didn't. I just watched Brielle crumble under the same spotlight she'd always chased. But I also knew Evan's reaction wasn't random. Something had triggered him, something I didn't understand yet. And I couldn't shake the feeling that my mother, gone 16 years now, would have recognized that kind of twist at the universe quietly turning the knife where it belongs. That night, as I drove away from the laughterless house on Willow Creek Road, the image replayed again and again, Brielle's smile cracking, Dad's disbelief, Evan's measured tone. It should have felt like victory. It didn't. It felt unfinished, like the first gust before a storm. I rolled down the window, letting the cold autumn wind cut through the smoke on my skin. "Family failure," I murmured, almost laughing. They had no idea how wrong they were, because before the weekend ended, I'd find out exactly why Evan Hart fired my sister, and why, for the first time in my life, that family would finally see who I really was. The tires hummed against the road as I drove back toward my apartment, past the quiet fields outside Edmond. Every mile between me and that backyard felt like distance from a life I'd been clawing to escape. My hands still smelled of smoke, the same way my childhood did burnt edges, leftover heat, and nothing that ever really cooled. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there, the silence pressing against me. The humiliation at the barbecue wasn't new. It was only louder. Brielle had always known where to cut deepest because she'd been handed the knife since she was 11. I pulled down the old boxes from the top shelf, the ones marked Mom, Linda Lane. I'd kept them for years, moving them from place to place, never brave enough to open them. Now, after that dinner, I needed to remember the woman who'd once made me feel like I wasn't invisible. My mother, Linda, died when I was 17. Breast cancer, fast and cruel. She was warmth and order, the kind of woman who wrote notes on napkins and left soup simmering when she went to bed. The day she died, the house turned silent, and within months, Dad filled that silence with a new voice. Carla Lane arrived with perfume that smelled expensive and a daughter who already had everything I didn't. Brielle was 11, loud, radiant, unbothered. She called my father Dad before I could call her sister. Within weeks, she had ballet shoes, a pink bedroom, and a key to his heart. At first, I tried to fit in. I thought if I worked hard enough, Dad might see me again. When I cleaned the kitchen, Carla would say, "Sweetie, that's Brielle's chore, but thanks for helping." When I scored high on exams, Dad said, "Well, Brielle's got her recital this weekend. Let's focus on that." Every year, the gap grew wider not just in attention, but in love. When Brielle turned 16, a brand new Mustang appeared in the driveway with a red bow. That night, I overheard Dad say, "She deserves it. She's worked hard." I'd been washing dishes in the dark, my acceptance letter to the University of Oklahoma folded in my pocket. Too afraid to ask for gas money, I learned to stop asking. By the time I started college, the pattern was permanent. Dad said the family budget was tight. Carla nodded sympathetically. Brielle got private school, braces, summer camp. I got a part-time job at the diner down the street, pouring coffee until dawn and sleeping through lectures. I remember one night the diner was empty, the neon sign flickering. Brielle called me by accident while complaining to a friend about how exhausting it is to have a sister who never measures up. She didn't hang up fast enough. I listened until she laughed. Then I deleted the voicemail and finished refilling sugar jars. 2 semesters later, I dropped out. Carla told the neighbors I couldn't handle the pressure. Dad didn't correct her. I packed what little I owned into a second-hand duffel and left. No goodbye party, no help with rent. They didn't notice when I stopped coming around. Holidays came and went. Brielle's success became their family currency new internships, social media posts, that perfect life framed on their mantle. I became a footnote, an awkward, "she's doing fine," I think, years blurred into survival. I learned that silence could be armor, that sometimes the only way to survive a family that doesn't see you is to stop standing where they look. Still, no matter how many nights I worked, how many bills I paid alone, there was a small part of me that wondered if Mom had lived. Would any of this have happened? Would Dad have loved me the same way he loved the idea of Brielle? I looked at the last photo I had of my mother, her arms around me, sunlight in her hair, a half-burnt cornbread on the counter behind us. That was the last time our home smelled like comfort. After that, it smelled like someone else's dinner. I put the photo back in the box and whispered, "You'd hate what we've become." The next morning, I'd wake up ready to clean out those boxes and unknowingly find the one thing that would finally change everything. The sun barely rose that morning, pale light cutting through half-closed blinds as I spread my mother's boxes across the floor. Dust rose in tiny clouds that caught the light, turning the room into a haze of memory. Her handwriting was everywhere, soft loops on labels, tiny hearts above her eyes, recipe cards, letters, Christmas photos. I reached for a cookbook so worn the spine had split. It was the one she always kept on the counter when I was little, pages smudged with flour and sugar. When I lifted it, something slipped out and landed with a dull thud on the carpet, a small velvet pouch, deep red, tied with a fading ribbon. At first, I thought it was jewelry, maybe an old locket. But when I loosened the string, a silver USB drive fell into my palm. No tag, no note. Just a tiny metal shape that suddenly felt heavier than it should. My first thought was that Mom had hidden family photos or letters. But when I plugged it into my laptop, folders appeared instantly labeled projects, campaigns, drafts, edits. Every file name sounded familiar. My chest tightened. I clicked the first one, Pipeline Safety Rebrand, 2018. There it was. The tagline I'd written years ago when I was freelancing from a coffee shop. The exact words, the exact color scheme, the same imagery. Only the signature at the bottom wasn't mine. It read, Concept by Brielle Lane, OKC Channel 9. I stared at the screen, my heartbeat drowning out every sound around me. File after file opened to the same story my story lifted, repackaged, and presented as hers. Projects I'd built late at night, ideas I'd lost sleep over, all stolen. I scrolled through folder after folder until my hand trembled on the trackpad. Each document had a timestamp from years ago, each one tied back to the same company, the same sister. My mind fought to understand. How had Brielle even gotten access? I'd never shown her my work. I'd emailed samples to Dad once, years earlier, when I was trying to prove I was doing something meaningful. I remembered him saying, marketing. So, commercials. He never asked again. That must have been it. She saw those files, took them, used them. And Mom must have found out. That's why she'd hidden the USB. Not to protect Brielle, but to protect me. I sat back, staring at the drive like it was a bomb waiting to detonate. Part of me wanted to call Dad right then, scream, demand answers. But what would it change? He'd believe her, like always. Brielle was the golden one, the one who never lied, never failed. Still, I needed someone who could make sense of this, someone who understood what this meant. So I called the only person I trusted, Zoe Park, my old roommate from freshman year. Zoe was the one who'd taught me how to stretch $5 into a week's worth of noodles. Now she worked in digital design, running a tiny office above a tire shop downtown. When she picked up, her voice was still raspy from too many late nights and too much coffee. Avery. Wow, it's been years. I found something, I said quietly. Something Mom left. I think it's proof Brielle stole my work. Zoe didn't even pause. Bring it. I'll make coffee. By the time I reached her place, the city was humming. She opened the door in sweatpants and a messy bun, her mug reading World's Designer. The apartment smelled like paint and burnt toast. We sat at the kitchen table, laptop between us, the USB plugged in. Zoe scrolled, her eyes narrowing as she flipped through the files. These are yours. Yes, every single one. She leaned back. You want me to trace the metadata, that's why I came. Her fingers moved fast. Windows opened, code flashed, timestamps appeared in neat lines. She compared fonts, file paths, hidden data. Within minutes, she'd mapped it all. 5 years of plagiarism, all under Brielle's login from the OKC Channel 9 servers. Zoe whistled low. She didn't even bother to change the metadata. Sloppy. She probably thought I'd never find out. I said. Zoe looked up. You built a name for yourself, didn't you? I Googled you once, Silverline Creative Group. That's you. I nodded slowly. Then why are you surprised she wanted what you had? Because I'd spent years believing I had nothing. Zoe printed the timeline, each page stamped with digital signatures and file IDs. Avery, this isn't just stealing. This is corporate fraud. You could destroy her career. I looked out the window at the rusted rooftops and the winter sky turning pale. The word destroy echoed in my head. I didn't want destruction. I wanted acknowledgement, a name, a moment where my father looked at me and didn't see a mistake. Zoe reached across the table, touching my wrist. "What are you gonna do?" I stared at the USB drive, still plugged in, glowing faintly. "I'm going to remind them who the real failure is," I said. Outside, the city lights flickered on, one by one, as if the world was bracing for what I'd just decided to do next. The next morning, my phone buzzed before sunrise. The screen lit up with a message from Brielle Family Barbecue this weekend. "Bring dessert. Evan's coming." I stared at the words until they blurred. Dessert. Like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just been fired in front of everyone. That was the thing about Brielle, she could erase shame faster than most people erased texts. The USB still sat beside my laptop, its silver surface catching the early light. Next to it lay Zoe's printed report timelines, logins, file paths, 5 years of my work, every theft documented in black and white, proof that Brielle hadn't just stolen my campaigns, she'd stolen my life's validation. For a long time, I thought revenge was loud shouting, exposing, breaking, but that morning it felt quiet, methodical, precise. I brewed coffee and opened my email drafts. One was already written, never sent, addressed to my father. "Dad, I know everything. About Brielle, about the stolen files, about what Mom left for me." My finger hovered over the send button before I closed the laptop. Not yet. Some truths deserved to be seen, not told. When I left Zoe's apartment, she called after me. "Whatever you're planning, make sure it's for peace, not payback." I smiled faintly. Maybe both. That afternoon, I replied to Brielle's text with 2 words, "I'll come." Outside, the wind shifted dry, sharp, electric, the kind that comes right before a storm. For years, I'd been the quiet one, the afterthought, the forgotten name in family introductions. But now, I had the truth. And this weekend, I was bringing more than dessert. By Saturday afternoon, the house on Willow Creek Road looked like a postcard for a family that never really existed. Red and gold balloons bobbed above the patio, the same ones from Dad's birthday weeks earlier. The grill smoked. The air smelled like buttered corn and denial. I parked down the street and sat in the car for a moment, the engine humming beneath my shaking hands. On the passenger seat sat my laptop and Zoe's folder, the quiet arsenal of everything my family had buried. Proof that for 5 years, they'd praised a thief and ignored the one who built it all. I wasn't there for revenge. I was there for closure. At least that's what I told myself. When I finally walked through the backyard gate, conversations paused. My father, Richard Lane, turned from the grill, his apron reading, "Kiss the cook," a slogan that had always sounded more like an order. "Avery," he said, pretending surprise. "Didn't think you'd make it?" I smiled politely. Wouldn't miss it. Carla, my stepmother, fluttered over, cheeks pink from the heat or maybe the wine. "Oh, sweetie, you didn't bring dessert in the car," I said, setting the laptop bag on the table instead. Across the yard, Brielle shimmered in a summer dress the color of champagne, curls bouncing, laugh rehearsed. She was playing hostess, refilling drinks, greeting cousins, pretending she hadn't been fired in front of half the family. Her voice carried over the music. "Everyone, this is Evan Hart, my boss. The reason I've been killing it at work." Heads turned, even the cousins perked up. Dad clapped Evan on the back like an old friend. "Our girl's a star," he said proudly. "Always knew she'd make it big." Evan met my eyes briefly across the table. His expression didn't change, but I caught the flicker of recognition. The silent question, "Are you sure you want to do this here?" I gave a small nod. Brielle kept talking. Louder now, soaking in every gaze like sunlight. "Some people think luck gets you places, but really, it's hard work, and a little family support never hurts." That was it, the casual cruelty. the subtle jab that only I could feel. I reached for my laptop. The zipper sounded like thunder in that quiet backyard. When the screen lit up, conversations dimmed. "What are you doing?" Brielle asked, the first edge of panic slicing through her voice. "I brought something to share," I said softly, "since we're all so proud of family success." The first slide appeared on the projector I'd set up against the shed, side-by-side images. On the left, my original marketing campaign drafts, taglines, designs, color palettes. On the right, screenshots from OKC Channel 9's broadcasts, identical in every line, font and phrase. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Wait," a cousin said, pointing. "That's the same thing." Brielle's smile faltered. "This is ridiculous," she said, stepping forward. "Those are public templates. Anyone could have metadata says otherwise." I interrupted. "Each file was uploaded from your company login. Each timestamp matches the night you said you were working late." Evan stepped closer to the screen, scrolling through the files with a calm, clinical focus. His jaw tightened. "These are Silverline campaigns," he said quietly. "Avery's company." Dad frowned. "Silverline?" Evan turned to him. "The agency your daughter, Avery, owns." The words hit like a match dropped into gasoline. Carla's wine glass slipped from her hand, red splattering across the grass. "You what?" Dad stammered. I met his eyes. The so-called failure built something real. "And your favorite stole from it." Brielle's voice cracked. "You're lying." Your Evan's tone hardened. "We verified the data. Intellectual property theft. Breach of contract. Brielle Lane. You're terminated. Effective immediately." The yard went silent except for the sizzle of forgotten meat on the grill. Balloons brushed the fence in the wind. Brielle's knees buckled slightly, her face draining of color. "You can't fire me again. Not here. Not in front of." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before stealing from your own sister," I said. Dad's tongs hit the ground, clattering against the concrete. "Avery," he whispered, like saying my name for the first time. "You built all this from scratch," I replied. "While you were busy funding Brielle's dreams, I was making my own." Carla's lips trembled. "There must be some mistake." Evan handed over the printed logs, color-coded, time-stamped. Undeniable. "No mistake. This is 5 years of work she claimed as hers." Brielle lunged forward, hands shaking. "Turn it off. That's private." Evan stepped between us. "Private property of Silverline, and now part of an active investigation." The crowd had stopped breathing. Cousins shifted uncomfortably, pretending to check their phones. Even the neighbor's dog went quiet. I shut the laptop slowly, the screen fading to black. "I didn't come here to humiliate you," I said. "I came so you'd finally stop pretending." Brielle stared at me, eyes red and glassy. "You don't get it. Dad made me do this. He said your company wouldn't last. He said you'd ruin the family name if people knew we were related." Her words hung in the air like a confession too late to save her. Dad's face went pale. "Brielle." She spun toward him, tears streaking her mascara. "You told me to. You said I could use it. You said she'd never notice." The weight of the truth crashed through the silence. Richard Lane, the man who preached honesty at every charity dinner, looked like he'd been caught stealing from his own sermon. For once, I didn't feel angry, just tired. Evan closed his folder. "We'll handle the rest internally." He nodded to me, respectful, almost proud. "Good work, Ms. Lane." The title made Dad flinch. I packed up my laptop, the click of the latch sharp against the quiet. The crowd began to scatter, murmuring excuses, carrying half-finished plates. Carla knelt, blotting wine from her dress, her hands trembling. Brielle just stood there, still and small, like a doll that had finally cracked. I walked past her toward the gate. She reached out weakly, fingers brushing my sleeve. "Avery, please, don't ruin me." I paused, meeting her eyes. You did that yourself. As I stepped into the evening air, the sound of the gate swinging shut behind me felt final, the clean snap of a bridge burning in silence. The night after the barbecue, the air in my apartment felt heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves had absorbed everything that happened. I hadn't turned on the lights. The laptop still sat on the counter, its screen black, reflection faintly showing the woman I'd become, the one they never thought I could be. A knock came just after 10, firm, familiar. I didn't need to look through the peephole to know. When I opened the door, Richard Lane stood there still in his pressed shirt, tie loosened, his pride wrinkled at the edges. He carried an envelope, thick and crisp. "We need to talk," he said. He walked in without waiting for an invitation. My father always did that, entering spaces that didn't belong to him, assuming they did. He set the envelope on my coffee table, eyes darting everywhere but my face. $250,000, he said finally. "It's your inheritance from your mother's side. You can have it now. All I'm asking is that you withdraw the claims. Let the company reinstate Brielle. This doesn't have to go any further." For a moment, I said nothing. I just watched him, the man who'd once told me to grow up and stop blaming others, the man who now stood in my apartment, buying silence. "Where did the money come from?" I asked. His mouth twitched. "Savings. Investments." Before I could answer, the doorbell rang again. When I opened it, Molly, my youngest sister, stood there clutching her phone. Her hands were shaking. "Avery, please, I have to show you something." On her screen glowed a spreadsheet, the header reading Edmond Youth Charity Fund. Lines of transactions filled the page. One entry stood out, a transfer for $250,000 labeled consulting fee. "It's from Dad's charity account," she whispered. The same day Brielle bought her condo, Richard's face hardened. "Turn that off." Molly didn't move. "You stole from scholarships, Dad, from kids." I looked down at the envelope. My name was written on it in his careful handwriting. For years, I'd wanted him to give me something that proved I mattered. Now I finally had it, and it reeked of shame. I tore the check in half, then again, until it was nothing but paper dust between my fingers. "You didn't protect your daughter," I said quietly. "You protected your favorite lie." He flinched. For once, he didn't have an answer. After Dad left, silence filled the apartment, thick, pulsing, alive. But peace didn't follow. It never does when truth finally detonates. By morning, the noise had started. Brielle's posts appeared online, vague quotes about betrayal, about sisters who can't stand someone else's success. Within hours, anonymous accounts echoed her words. Toxic family. Fraud. Silver line scandal. Emails poured in from clients asking if the rumors were true. For a moment, fear clawed its way up my throat. I'd built Silverline from nothing. I couldn't lose it now. That's when I called Elena Vargas, my attorney. Calm, measured, sharp as glass. She drafted a cease and desist letter addressed to every Lane formal, airtight, ruthless. Any further defamation, she warned, would result in lawsuits for libel and emotional distress. Within 24 hours, the noise faded, but not completely. Dad's voicemail came last, his voice hoarse. "Broken. You're tearing this family apart. Think of Molly. Think of what you've done." I deleted it without hesitation. Because here's the truth, no one wants to admit sometimes. Families destroy themselves long before anyone speaks up. I didn't break us. I just stopped pretending we weren't already broken. That night, I blocked their numbers. Dad, Carla, Brielle, even Molly. The quiet that followed wasn't loneliness. It was clarity. For the first time, the only voice left in my life was my own.